The first mistake that you can possibly make when negotiating is not already having your CPM figured out. So if you are not up to date on your terminology, go ahead and check out the terminology video where CPM means cost per mile. So when you get a carrier who signs up to allow you to dispatch on their behalf, they're going to let you know part of your carrier profile that you give them should be asking them, what is your minimum CPM? And they may say something like, if they have a reefer, they may say something like, well, I want at least $4 a mile. They'll let you know their bare minimum. And of course, this does not mean you go and you just only go for their bare minimum. You just want to know what's the lowest that you could possibly go if it comes down to it. They'll tell you their minimum CPM. And you look on the load board and you see that the load is posted saying that you're about to do a 200-mile load. You would literally do the multiplication. If they said their minimum CPM is $3.50, you would do $3.50 times 200 miles. And whatever that number is that you come up with, that would be the minimum number that you can accept when you start negotiating with this broker. Once you get on that phone with the broker, know that they already know the maximum that they're willing to pay on this load. They already have their number. You need to have your number too. You don't want to get on the phone and you're trying to calculate, or you're in the middle of negotiating and you don't even know the bare minimum number that you can accept. You're going into a fight that you're not going to win. You need to already know when you get on the phone with these brokers. If you haven't done that already, it's really fast paced. You're not going to have time to try to do all these calculations. They're going to run all over you because they already did their calculations. So make sure you already know that I can't accept nothing less than $500 for this load. So let me go ahead off the bat and try to see if I can get $600, $650, or whatever the case may be, depending on what else is going along with the load. Number 2 is not leveraging the right things. We all probably grew up in households where, you ask that question like, why is this or why is that? And it's like, because. That's not something that you can use during negotiation. You can't say, I want more money and it's just because. You need to provide some valid points in order to be persuasive when you're talking to this broker, because you already have a common goal. They need the load moved, you want to move the load. Most of these brokers, they got a whole list and they're trying to fulfill a contract. They say, okay, I need somebody to take this load, this load, this load. And when they get on the phone with you, they would like to give you the load if everything matches up. You need to go into it knowing that, hey, this broker does want somebody to move this load just like I want to be the one to move this load. So let me keep that in mind. And let me hit them with valid points as to why I want more money. Because remember, the more money they're giving you is the less money that's going into their pocket. So, of course, it's going to be a conversation. And most negotiations are kind of going to be like a conversation. You toss the information back and forth. It's not a crazy bidding war. It's real simple. And you throw out your number and they'll let you know the best that they can do. Some valid points can be like, hey, no, the cost of fuel is too high. I can't accept that, my carrier wouldn't be making any money. Sometimes you may find that in the notes, it'll tell you that it's a touch job versus a no touch. When it's no touch, that means that the carrier is picking up the load and dropping the load. They don't have to touch the freight at all. And if it is a touch load, that means that carrier is going to have to either load or unload that truck, or maybe assist in unloading or loading. If that's the case, first of all, that should be something, again, that's on your carrier profile that you gave to your carrier when they first signed on to do business with you. So you should already know if they're willing to touch freight, or if they just want to, if they say no touch only, I only want to pick up these loads and drop these loads, and that's it. And sometimes you'll find a guy that says for the right amount. And if that's the case, you need to leverage that when you're negotiating. You can say like, no, well, I got my carrier, he's willing to do it, but it has to make sense. The dollar amount has to make sense. The broker understands what you're saying. They know that you came up with a valid point. They know they have to come off of some more money when it comes down to this negotiation. If they had to have accessories like load bars, load straps, if they have to place a tarp on top of the load, and it's not just as simple as they throw in a sheet over the load. They're really actually doing some labor. So make sure that you leverage that and get more money in that negotiation. It's more than just their fuel that has to be considered. You have to consider the fact that, okay, this person has to get out and load this or unload this, or okay, they have to use these load bars, use these load straps. Like I said, use that as leverage. Ask for extra 50, extra 100. It adds up. If the load is a super late drop off or a super late pickup, where they're driving all throughout the night. These are loads that most carriers don't want to do. A lot of them don't like driving through the night. A lot of them don't like driving through the mountains. Use these things to your advantage when you're negotiating. Be familiar with the areas. A lot of them don't like going, being up in New York or Philadelphia or any of those areas. It's very tight streets and it's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of stuff that they don't want to deal with. So just kind of be familiar, so that when you're negotiating, you can use these things as leverage, and the broker will be like, okay, valid point, fine, this is what I can do. If it's a super early pickup or a super early drop off, they're doing it at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Think about how you wouldn't want to be doing this at this hour, and make sure you use that as leverage when you're negotiating. If they have to hold the load. So sometimes there's situations where there's a load that has to be picked up at 8 o'clock in the morning, but it can't be dropped off till 4 o'clock p.m. However, that load is only a 50-mile load. So it's not like that time is going to be chewed up with the carrier driving. So they're literally sitting there and they can't pick up another load because they still have this load on their truck. This is making them miss out on money. So if you see a load like that where they're paying and the calculations are there as far as mileage, but you have to consider the fact that this is burning up their hours of service. So even once they finally drop the load at 4, some of them know how to stop their time and do all that stuff, but that 14-hour on-duty clock, it doesn't stop. My carrier can't pick up another load. My carrier is just going to be sitting on this load and can't do anything until 4 o'clock. That means you need to be negotiating a higher rate. You have to consider all that. Consider that normally they would have time to drop off a load and go pick up another one, and then that way the next day they're just dropping. But in this case, that's chewing up all their hours by having to just sit and wait until they can drop this load. So this gives you more leverage when you're negotiating. For number 3, avoid going into negotiating without some sort of training or even role playing. You may, the same way that you would role play for any job that you take on, you can do the same thing and just practice. So the conversation is not as stressful as it may seem. They're going to ask you information, and then they're going to give you information. Always have your pen and paper ready, because they spit this information out so fast you don't want to miss anything. You want to have a clear view of what you're agreeing to on behalf of your carrier, and you want to be able to say, like, okay, they want low straps, they want low bar, they want this, they want the temp to be at 10 degrees. You need to be able to scribble all that down so that you can make sure that when that rate con comes over to you, it matches what you already talked about. Sometimes these brokers are spitting out so much information, you may get that rate con and you find out something totally different. And then at that point, since you wrote down all the information, you can contact them back and say, hey, that's not what we agreed to. You said X, Y, Z. And now, hey, I need more money because that wasn't said. So if you can't get any type of training, practice role playing, have somebody negotiate with you, pretend you're talking to a broker, and just do the best that you can. 4, avoid taking loads that are paying less than your carrier's requested CPM. If your carrier told you that they need at least $3 per mile, and you're calling different brokers and you're finding that the first one that you call, they say, well, you can get the load, but I'm only giving it to you for $2.75 per mile. No, you have to tell them, like, okay, well, if you change your mind, give me a call. And get off the phone and go back to the drawing board. Don't just accept what they're saying. Now, sometimes there can be times where it's due to the market. So if you've been making several calls and it's getting close to 10, 11 a.m., like I said, once you get to like 1 o'clock, you don't want to be looking for a load the same day that they're being dispatched. You kind of want to try to be a day ahead. It's better for you, it's better for the carrier, it's less stressful on you to be on that phone trying to book them a load. But when you're trying to do it during a rat race during the same day, if you don't have a load by like noon, you're probably not going to get a load, or it's going to be a real trashy load. But if for some reason you're on the load board and you've been calling, let's just say you've been on there since 7:30 in the morning, and everybody you're calling, or you look at the DAT load board and you see it's letting you know the average that certain lanes are going for, and it's just lower than what the carrier wants. It's your job as their dispatcher to contact them and let them know, because of course ultimately they don't want to sit. They don't want to sit and miss out on a day of money and they can't move and they made no money for the day. So if that's the case where you're making these calls and you're finding that nobody is paying the minimum that you're asking for, or you looked at the market and you're seeing that nothing is paying what they asked for, what they're asking for, and it's down, it's your job to contact your carrier and you have a little consultation with them and tell them like, hey, like, I've been looking for your low, but it's looking like right now the market's down, the average lane is going for XYZ. I don't want to leave you sitting. They may say from there like, hey, try for a little while longer. If you don't have nothing in an hour, then you could change that to the least I'll take is $275. You know, or you may have some that say, well, I'm at home anyway, so it's okay. Find me something for tomorrow that's paying what I want. It's going to be times where you have to decide that, hey, this is not looking good. I need to contact my carrier and let them know what things are looking like. They don't know what the market is looking like. Not all of them. They hired you to do that. Anything to avoid leaving them sitting, but you have to communicate that. You don't just book that load for them assuming that they want it. No, you still communicate and let them know because this is their money that you're talking about, okay? But if you just got started, it's 7:30 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and you're making calls, this is the time where they're least willing to really negotiate with you because they know it's early and it's a great chance. And I'm talking about the brokers because they know it's early and they know it's a good chance that they may find somebody. They're not quite desperate or getting afraid yet that they may not be able to get somebody to move this load. So they know that they have the upper hand at that time. So they may tell you like, no, most I'm paying out on this load is $1,000 and that's it. And then you have to tell them like, okay, well, if anything changes, give me a call. And I always say that because I've been negotiating and I've talked to brokers and they just want to see if they can pay someone less to get the load. And that's not a big deal. I mean, if you were in their position, you would understand that. You would say like, okay. And so I always let them know like, well, you know, if nobody comes through for that amount, you know my amount. So give me a call. And it builds a little rapport and keeps a good relationship with them as well because it's no big deal. It's just business, nothing personal. So, hey, right now you're saying you won't pay more than $1,000. If for some reason that changed and that clock starts ticking and you see that nobody's accepting that load, and it's really good when everybody, you know, all dispatchers and carriers, whoever's on the load board stays on the same page and say like, no, this needs to pay a certain amount. It's when people get on there and they start accepting the bare minimum loads that it really drops the market. So now the people who are trying to find loads, they're forced to get that cheap freight. And it's like, no, if you stick to, you know, you stay true to you, stay true to your carrier, and you say like, nah, this is the best, this is all I can accept. And you may have to say like, no, and you move on and you start calling other people and you'll find someone who's willing to pay what that load is worth. And know that when it gets like later in the day, or if you notice a load has been on the load board for like an hour already, really after, if it says something been on there for 30 minutes, that should be gone when you call them. If that broker still has that load, know that you have the upper hand because either they've been offering a really low amount or like it's something with that load that nobody really wants it. And so if your carrier is willing to take it, you need to be negotiating. You have the upper hand. That load's been sitting too long and that broker knows that they're going to have to pay some money for that load. So these are just a few tips that I wanted to share with you all just so that you all know how you can leverage when you're negotiating, what you're looking for, how you can, you know, the rebuttals that you can come up with when you're met with that rejection when a broker is telling you like, nah, I can't pay the minimum CPM that you're looking for, or I can't meet you here. You'll know, you know, what different tactics and things that you can use to kind of go up against that and have a better chance of being successful in your negotiating and securing a load for an amount that your carrier will be happy with.